Join me April 12th through 14th for Blossom and Bliss, a women's yoga retreat for springtime renewal. This weekend retreat is your chance to pause, have some fun, refresh your spirit, and pamper your soul. Surrounded by the beauty of the Texas Hill Country, we will tune into the rhythms of nature with yoga, meditation, labyrinth, and play. Relaxing wading pools, nature trails, glamping at its finest makes this retreat a one-of-a-kind experience. And this time, I'm adding 2 fun elements. I have a guest coming in to help us with mantras and malas, creating our own mala bead bracelets for our own prayers and affirmations. And then I'm bringing in another person to help us with a beautiful campfire sing-along. So as we raise our voices, we lower our nervous systems, and we feel better by the time we leave. So this is April 12th through 14th at Retreat Ranch in Marble Falls, Texas. For all the information, go to jessgoulding.com/blossom. Welcome to Jess on the Mountain, a podcast about yoga, chakras, and becoming your own guru. I am Jess Goulding, and today I'm here with Scout, who joins us today to talk about being a doula, a midwife in training, and pleasure activism. This is what I gained from your IG bio, Scout. But and I mean, I've known you for many, many years. We go way back. We haven't had a good, heartfelt conversation in a long time. So thank you for coming on the podcast to talk about your life and chakras.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to start with just a little introduction of who you are, what you're up to, what you're doing, what's inspiring you, or what brings you to the chakra table today.
Yeah. I know it's like how we were just talking. I'm like, it's so many things. Mostly, I'm Scout, and I do a lot of work with the body. I do a lot of work with energy. I do a lot of work with the energetic body. I am a midwife. I am a doula. I've been a birth worker for quite a while. That's also like in my spirit and in my bloodline. I'm a yoga teacher, and a movement teacher, just like all around facilitator. I like to think of it more as like community facilitation. And with all of that, I think that chakra work for sure changed everything for me. It was one of those first things that was introduced to me that made so much sense and felt like it was waking up knowledge that was already there and giving me more context to it. It was the first thing that gave me language to things that I felt like I understood for a long time, but didn't have language for. So, yeah, I remember it's been years now. It's been like, I think over a decade or almost a decade since I did my first chakra training with Anodea Judith. And that like changed everything for me. And so now I can't help but see the world and see everything through these lenses.
Well, yeah, I think we were at that same training.
Yeah.
And that was my experience as well. Like, whoa, this is a framework that I understand. This is a way to really see the world in a way that helps me understand energetically how I am taking in and releasing back out. And this is a whole dynamic process, and we are many faceted humans, but it helps create a language that we can all speak. And I'm excited to have you on at this point in this season, because this last week, the episode was Chakra 2, letting go. And when you work with birthing, in my experience, so I taught postnatal yoga for a lot of years. So I would catch them after you had them, right? With the moms and the babies in class. And one of the things was big about letting go. So they're letting go of control in the body, control of the plan, control of so many things, which is a chakra 2 experience. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you could bring to that conversation about chakra 2 or letting go. And then we'll move it certainly into the aspects of that with delight. But how have you seen the chakras working in the birth process, or anything about the letting go piece of chakra 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is life, right? Like that is life, and that is all the pivotal moments in life, which birth is one of them, or even just being pregnant or expecting like another human, expanding your family. All of that stuff is like a pivotal transformative moment in which like letting go is just the way. I think that something that actually reminds me more of when I was teaching yoga every week, is that was one of the biggest things that people would ask is like, well, how are we supposed to let go? Like, what is that? It sounds so simple. And people are like, yes, release, let go, surrender is another one that we hear a lot in the birth community is like, just surrender. And it's like the most simplistic way to talk about one of the heaviest things that you ever do. And so um, and I say it's simplistic and it's very like paradoxal, because it's very complicated, but also as simple as just like being open enough to where it's like all the doors and all the windows are open, so things just leave and come as they will. But that is very hard when you are essentially like in a vehicle taking you from one place to another. Like the first thing we do, I said it earlier, um, to some people in a session that I had. But the first thing we do when we get into a car is like we put our seatbelt on. And so anytime you're in this like hugely transformative space where you're moving from one space to another, like all the protective defenses go up. So the very opposite thing that you want to do is like just be soft and like release and let go and trust. And those are the moments in which you are then tasked with like doing so. So it's very big and it's very body oriented. And I think that we see that come out like in various ways. I think we see that expressed in various ways, like not only through the process of pregnancy, but also like through labor and then through like the birthing process and then adjusting to life with another person.
And is it so, I mean, these transitions, uh, like when you were talking about putting on the seatbelt and you're something and you're going forward, and yet the word that came to my mind was primal, which
Mm-hmm.
is, very chakra one, but that's also where we have our fears. So as soon as we're expected to like open the flower and let things go, there's this primal thing that takes over. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how do you help people get in touch with that primal and natural piece of childbirth? Because so often it has become very, I think, intellectualized and
Mm-hmm.
mentalist. And
Yeah, a
this is
hundred.
this is the process of the baby, the conception to birth, and this is the process
Mm-hmm.
of coming and checking in the hospital or checking in with your doula or midwife or whatever space you're choosing to do. So how do you help people get from the upper chakras of the mental capacity around this really down into those primal, lower vibrational, natural, energetic centers?
Yeah, I think you just give them space and allow them to do so. Honestly, like that's the thing. I think it's not because here's the thing, life, and this is true for birth too, because I see birth as life, but like birth is a huge metaphor for all of life, but there is a point where you will be pushed there. And I think that everyone has the availability and and the connectivity to get there, but it's about, are you allowing yourself to be in that space? And that could be something as small as, I want to know the answer to this question because I'm curious about it at 2:30 in the morning. So what am I going to do? Am I going to go down a rabbit hole of Google? Am I going to open every pregnancy book that I have? Am I going to text my midwife at 2:30 in the morning to ask a question? Or am I going to like, what am I going to do? That could be as small as like that type of decision, or as big as like being able to let go and open up enough to allow a human being to come through your through your body. So I think that it's really allowing people the space to understand that that's a part of it and to see what happens when you get there. And I think that it's a lot of what you said, getting people out of their brain and into their body. So it's a lot less of continuing the cycle of filling with more data and information, and allowing people to just be in their heart, be in their feelings, be in the process of being in their body, whether that's moving, whether that's being still, whether that's like being seen. And I think that that's the hardest part for most people on the journey of life. And whether that's like somebody who's a spiritual teacher, whether that's somebody who is a birth worker, whether it's someone who, like, in any profession or any way that you support the community, I think the biggest struggle is understanding that, like, we don't need more information. Like, it's 2024. We have access to everything, that every piece of information that is possible to know, I have access to right now in this moment, in this little phone that I can hold in my hand. But we don't need more information. We don't need, and that's why I think everyone's being called to this idea of, like, ceremony and letting go and ritual and grounding down, grounding in, and understanding what's going on in our environment, because we're being called to the simplicity. We're being called back to the primal space, as you were saying. So I think it's not so much like, what can I do for them? It's more of just like, what space can I provide? And for the most part, that's not trying to continue to give you more information or to give you, I mean, I can give you all those things. I can give you stats, and I can give you the medical information, and I can give you all that stuff. But it's, I think, truly, being a midwife and being a witness and, even working with people's bodies has taught me that people just need space. And they need to feel allowed. They need to feel allowed, and they need to have space, and then they will do all the things that they need to do.
So that what's coming to mind is something that I read that you posted literally today. That's really talking into this. This is, you said Google, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. That's exactly what you said. So I'm quoting you. She says, one of the biggest shifts I've made from doula to midwife is ushering people into the mystery and inspiring them to stay in that sacred space. This means less education and more intuition, less knowing and more feeling. This means that I provide less information from books, Google, or a medical license, and spend more time listening and noticing how it feels for people to tap into themselves for information rather than reaching outside of their inner knowing. And I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about that process of maybe observing it happen, because you said they just need the space. And if you have any stories or just more conversation about watching someone switch from the data brain to the primal knowing body.
Yeah. I mean, it happens very fast. That's what I think will shock people, is I think we get really stuck in the thought process of, like, we're all so disconnected and we're all so removed and we all have so much to fix. And I think that when you strip down to these transformative moments, you will be shocked at how quickly it happens when people are just given some space. And I'm thinking of just sitting in appointments with people, because in midwifery appointments, we have the same type of appointments that people would have with, any of their, more medicalized doctors. They're an hour long. And all of our clinical work takes, we could do everything that we need to do clinically in a prenatal in 5 minutes. So the rest of that time is just us talking. And that could be what they're watching on Netflix. That could be some of their most inner fears or, relationship stuff coming up for them. That could be whatever we want to talk about. We are forming a bond. We're creating space together. And the biggest part of that transition for me was to stop providing people with information. And that's what I was used to doing as a doula. People come with lists of questions, right? They're like, I've been waiting all week for my appointment, and here is my list on my phone of all the questions I have for you that I've been reading about and I've been researching about. And the practice of no longer, like, jumping in and telling them, well, here's the latest study, and have you checked this website? And, oh, I've had clients that have done this in the past. I've heard people do this in the past, and giving them even more information and data, to just taking a deep breath and, like, asking them more questions or just not providing them with an answer. It's been interesting to see how people react to that. And it's usually by getting into their body and into their feelings. And sometimes that feeling is them answering their own question. Like, I will just be there quiet, and 10 minutes have gone by and they have answered their own question and they realize it, or them uncovering a deeper feeling that they realize is actually there, and that they're talking about it and feeling it, and that's what we've moved on to. Or them sometimes looking at me and being like, you don't give a straight answer ever. Like, you're not giving a straight answer. You're not, you know what I mean? And then them realizing, like, oh, it's not about my answer or what I say. It's not about the information. So seeing how quickly people, just with a little bit of space, really do get into what's in the heart space. It's not far underneath there. It's not, I don't think we're all as lost and far gone as we like to think. Like it's right underneath the surface. It's just, are we giving each other space and time? And I think this has become more normalized. I've hear a lot of people online talking about even just like, are you genuinely asking, how are you? Or are you just asking, like, we're passing each other in the store and you're just saying, hey, what's up? But are you genuinely asking, like, how are you? And are you taking a deep breath before you answer that question genuinely? I think people are giving more space for people to slip into that primal space. But I think of my prenatals. I think of my prenatals and I think of how those have changed. And I think of how I engage with people has changed and how that's ignited change in me and my process too. It's ignited change in me looking at myself and asking how much self-worth I was getting out of being the provider of the answers, right? Like, and really being able to sit with the space of the ego, which is, I think, my responsibility as someone who ushers people through these spaces of like understanding truly that like there's so much, none of this really has anything to do with me. I get to be there and I'm very fortunate. I get to be there and I have a set of skills that can help the process. But how people have birth experiences has very little to do with me. How people birth their babies into the world has very little to do with me. If babies live or die has very little to do with me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get to make a lot of those decisions. How these babies are parented, I don't get to make any of those decisions. So it's really just me getting to be there, and that means stripping down my ego of like, these people really don't need me. Like, it's they would like me to be around for safety reasons, and I think that that's very great, and I take it as a privilege. But these people don't need me to have everything they've ever wanted and to have their fulfilling, empowering experience. I just get to be there, and that also means that they don't need all of my anecdotes. They don't need all of my data and information. Sometimes it's fun to exchange, but they don't need that. They really just need space to work things out on their own and to see how uncomfortable it is to not know, because we all know that's what like parenting in life is like, we never know. So how uncomfortable is that space, and can we be there together?
So beautiful and so inspiring in so many different ways, especially your recognition of your job there. Like there's a time in life where we think it's up to us and we are super important. And if we don't do this, we will let people down, or it's my job to fill in the blank. And then as we mature, mentally and spiritually and egotistically, I see what you're saying, this path to like, oh, it's not about me at all.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful and free and not necessarily highly publicized place to be. But
Yeah.
there is a letting go of the ego in order to let that person really thrive. Like, I'm not making that rose blossom, just like I'm not making this baby come through. I understand that working with people in yoga therapy, I have learned the less I say, the more then they can become their own guru, do their own thing, and which is so good. In chakra 3, you've got your self-esteem right there. And it is the showing up for yourself that builds self-esteem, not somebody else telling you, you just did great at that. Right. It's, and you're talking about giving them space to show up for themselves. Let their inner wisdom show up for them. Let that happen, which is a beautiful container that you're holding. So thank you for being that light in the world and being that example. And I'm finding it inspiring for any relationship, not just doulas and midwives and yoga teachers, but any therapist, anybody in a listening position, and friends. Mm-hmm. What would it be like to just listen to friends, and partners and things, when we tend to want to help solve problems, because it's uncomfortable for us when our loved ones are undergoing a thing. Mm-hmm. But if we can just be the container, I'm very inspired by that, Scout. I'm going to keep thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's been like that has been midwifery training for me. Yeah. Like that has been midwifery training, has been becoming the observer, becoming the witness, like all the medical stuff, all the studying, all of that is like secondary, but working with my preceptor, with my teacher, it's been the ego work. That's true midwifery work.
Yeah. Which happens too when you go through yoga teacher training. How many times people think they want to be a teacher and really you just get torn inside out and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. You just like deepen your own self-knowledge.
Yeah.
And realize like, I don't have anything to teach.
Yeah. I was just saying that just 10 minutes before I hopped on here. I was talking to my friend who is working at a studio for the first time since she's gotten her certification. And I was just like, oh, now you're on the journey of like, do I even want to teach? Like, this was for so many things, but what was it really for? Yeah, it takes us time to figure that out.
And it's so good to ask those questions of any of it. The raising of the kids, you realize how much, oh, they're not about me.
Yeah.
They're not an extension of me.
No.
Like, we came together, put together the DNA for this particular human form, but
yeah,
that's about it. Like,
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's literally like we get the privilege of helping you out. But I mean, this is really all you have your whole own contract with life. You have your own thing going on. Like it's interesting.
It's a tough line to walk, but I think the more we can open up and let go, but it comes from this tapping into that intuition. The other thing you were talking about with this really holding a container and just listening and letting them essentially find their way to that own teacher inside of them, that own wisdom. It makes me wonder, I bet that's how you can conserve energy in these long processes of birth. Because if you're trying to minute by minute help them out, that would be exhausting. So can you talk a little bit about energy conservation and how you can give so much without over giving? And I'm sure you cross the line from time to time. We all do, but how does boundary work, or how does
I was about to say lovely boundaries, lovely boundaries. Yeah, that's something else I've been working with, I think, since we took that chakra training years ago, but also it just keeps getting reinstated, as we know, like as we practice with something and we just go around the spiral of continually working with it. But yeah, the boundaries are I feel like I need to be very protected. I need to be very protective of my time and my space, and that you can't be everything to everyone. So it is a little bit of like an energy conservation. And it's also what I think, I'm going to kind of talk about this from a flip perspective and have a moment to give like some love, like pour some love onto my preceptor and my teacher, because this is something that she's worked so hard with me on. Because I had a lot of what you just mentioned before of like, it needs to be me. There's so much work that needs to be done. I need to be able to show up. I have so much energy. So I should show up to all these places. I should really be putting in all of this work. I should be doing all of this research. I should be trying to be all these things to all of these people. And when I first embarked on midwifery, I just thought it was like another thing I'm going to have to like go full force into. And to have a teacher that has been inspiring me to like slow down and to do less and to rest more, it felt very strange and like counterproductive. It was very difficult for me for a while. But she said that to me last week when we were talking about this very thing, and about the evolution of just kind of giving people less because they don't really need what you've got. You know what I mean? And that's not true all the time. It's not true all the time. Like there are times that people need things from me and I'm there to give it to them. But the art of just like kind of giving less, and she was very sweet in just reminding me of how important my place is in the midwifery world, and how she's like, we need people to stick around, because in a lot of these caregiving roles, whether you're a movement teacher, a therapist, an energy worker, a birth worker working with people's bodies, you have the tendency to take everything on. And then we have burnout rates of like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And we don't have this longevity and the sustainability in the work. And a part of that is energy management. And that's the beautiful thing about, in my opinion, like true spirituality and empowerment, is that true spirituality and like true rooted path is in self-empowerment and understanding the divinity in each of us, meaning that like it is all a self-sourced thing. Like we need to rely on each other for support and for health, but this is a self-sourced power. So the beautiful thing about that is that you really are inspiring people to stay in their own lanes and for you to stay in your own lane. And that in turn creates sustainability. So it really is about, if I answered every single text at 2:30 in the morning, I would never go to sleep, even when I wasn't, at births. And so it becomes less about, answering the question, which is a completely valid question to have, and more, and, it's more about like, what do you really feel about this? How do you feel about the answer to this question? Like, what happens when you didn't find the answer? Where else did you look? What do they do when I don't answer them? Because they're not always going to have me. So like, let's dive into those aspects, which I think are more empowering for you than, giving you stats on, bed sharing or, you know what I mean? Like, anything like that, like whether I, scratch that itch or not. And so I think it is about being able to be restful and sustainable, but I will never forget Sean Korn talking about that when I first became a yoga teacher, and Sean Korn talking about not taking everything that your students give you in a class home. And that's whether it's you being sensitive enough and empathic enough to be able to like read the energy coming from their bodies when everybody's letting everything go in a yoga class, or the people who stop you on their way out the door and have to tell you about how amazing your class was and how they really needed it because they had the worst week of their life, and, telling you everything that's going on in their life, whatever it is that's happening, taking all of that home after teaching like 4 classes in a day, you have nothing left. And then what good are we? Like what good are we if we can't be there to nurture ourselves? And so I think it's come up in various parts of my journey, whether it was last week with my teacher, reminding me about sustainability and not giving too much, or, Sean Korn, when I first became a yoga teacher, talking about it and creating sustainability in that work. I think it's really self-preservation is in self-empowerment is the way. When we're all full, we have more to give,
And yeah, I wrote down that self-sourced power. I mean, you're making me picture an inner fountain that just rises and falls and feeds itself. And it needs to support a container. Like a lot of your writing and things is a lot about community and each other. So it's not that to have your own true boundaries means you retract from community. It means you're full on in it. But you know what's yours and you know what's theirs, and everybody's playing their roles in support of each other, not trying to do their others' lives for them.
Yeah.
Or tell them to do it differently, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the hardest part is that for a lot of the healing that people are looking for and a lot of the transformation that people are looking for, it requires us to be in our own feelings more. But being in our own feelings is also understanding that our feelings are no one else's responsibility. So it's just a lot of work for you. It's a lot of people can support you for sure. 100%. They can, what I like to say, like give you water on the mile. You know what I mean? Like they can be there and be cheering you on. But at the end of the day, like they can't do anything for you in that realm. That's all you. And so Tej always says that, and it sticks in my brain. I hear Tej Arvin's voice saying that to me all the time. Like, no one's coming to save you. It's just you. You're coming to save you. It's just you. And I say that to myself all the time. And that is one of the most liberating statements to hear, and also terrifying to most of us who have any type of abandonment or childhood trauma. It's like, you're like, it's just me. Oh my God. And then at the same time, you're like, wow, but it is just me and I am capable. It is living in that crazy world.
And that bouncing back and forth. And, if I'm taking good care of myself and I'm eating right and I'm getting sleep, then I can be in that. But as soon as I'm not sleeping or resting appropriately, or I have let my boundaries down and I'm drained, then I'm like, why, where do I get some help here? Who's coming to save the day? It's like, my nap.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The minute I attach my emotional well-being to someone else's emotions is the minute that then I'm no longer like self-empowered and then I'm at empty. So like, what good am I to you? The minute that I can't have a good day because you're going through something emotional, it's like, then who's going to bring us up? If I can't bring us up, like to a better place because I'm, too busy being engulfed in you, then I mean, I have to be up here so that I can help you come back up here. So it's like, this is the idea of how lonely it can feel. It can feel a little bit lonely because many of us are raised in environments that beget a lot of like the emotional codependency of like, we all have to be okay. But it's like you said, it's the releasing judgment and allowing everybody to do their own life, including kids, which is very difficult. You know what I mean? Like that's the most difficult thing ever.
Jess on the Mountain is brought to you by my online course, Chakra Savvy, Reset Your Life Game Plan. It's a 7-month online deep dive into the chakras to take you from feeling unsettled, upended, and questioning your direction to feeling grounded, confident, and happy in your life by harnessing the power of the chakras. You can check it out or join the wait list at jessgoulding.com/chakrasavvy. With Chakra Savvy, Reset Your Life Game Plan, you gain access to the yoga practices, breathing techniques, meditations, and lifestyle suggestions that help harmonize your system and bring you a sense of balance and ease to your everyday life. So that's at jessgoulding.com/chakrasavvy. Join the waitlist, and you'll be the first to know the next time a cohort begins. During COVID, you were inspiring me a lot with the work you were doing with Black Birthing Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you're still working with or meeting about? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of just kept accidentally starting like nonprofits through just redistributing money. That's what I felt like I got known for in 2020. I was just like constantly distributing money. And then I was like, maybe I should actually file a 501(c)(3) so that Venmo isn't looking at me like, why are you moving all this money? And it really was just trying it. It actually started with Michelle Obama coming here and talking about her book Becoming, and I think that was in 2019. That was right before the pandemic. And I wanted to go with a group of people, and the tickets were very expensive. The tickets were wild. And I made a post online where I talked about me and a small group of Black women and their daughters who wanted to go to this thing. And I was like, if anyone's interested in like donating money to like a pool, I can start buying tickets and giving them out to people. And I mean, we got enough money to where everybody got to go. And there were just so many people that wanted to just donate. And they were like, I can throw some money so that y'all can go see this. It's really important. And there was a group of us that all got to go. And I thought it was really cool. And I was like, there are people that want to help and redistributing wealth in a grassroots way. And so, of course, in 2020, as things started to become very strange in the hospitals, home birth really had a massive boom. I mean, people who weren't even originally interested in home birth were looking into it because they specifically didn't want to go to the hospital. So I just started to see a lot of confrontation and people having to confront the maternal mortality crisis because there were a lot of women of color who were too afraid to choose the at-home option. They were told that they were high risk. They weren't sure if they had health issues, but couldn't figure it out and couldn't get any straight answers. And then people who definitely had health issues in the past that weren't sure how safe anything was for them, but also knew they were being mistreated in the hospitals and they were terrified to go. And so I just immediately wanted to start distributing funds so that people of color could have better access while being pregnant. And that was to anything that was wellness related. That was like if they wanted to pay for a midwife and even just do midwifery care for their prenatal care and then go into the hospital to have their baby. That was like if they needed to go to the chiropractor, if they needed to do any of these things that I saw many people could do, that many people of color were having issue having access to, that could actually help their overall wellness, lower cortisol levels, hopefully start to affect and figure out different things health related with like preeclampsia, as well as like diet and nutrition. So I just started redistributing money. Anytime people donated money to me, it was like less than 24 to 48 hours that like that money was just gone to somebody else who needed it. And I had people constantly applying and letting me know what they needed money for. And money went from everything to like doulas of color who were attending people of color's birth, but then like were like late on their car payments and their cars were about to get repossessed in the pandemic, to people who couldn't afford midwives or OB care, to people who needed like birth kits or medical supplies. So yes, that was happening for like a year and a half. And then thankfully in Austin, there were a bunch of other nonprofits that popped up, one specifically being Black Home Birth Matters. And so since mine was literally just little old me and like my mom helping me do stuff, I have then sort of like taken like mine down a notch and kind of put it in the back door until I get my license and I can start things back up. But I've shifted support to Black Home Birth Matters, which is another nonprofit that started up around the same time. And they have been providing Black mothers and mothers of color with home birth supplies and payments for home birth midwives and things like that. So there's been a lot that's been coming up, and it has been very, very helpful over the last couple of years to be able to show up for the community in that way and also help other organizations that are showing up in that way.
Oh, that's amazing. And we'll link to all of the things that you mentioned in the show notes because people need to know. And I didn't realize that's what was going on. You were just you became a conduit. Which is just kind of how spirit works. Like, here's what you're going to do now. And you just answered the call.
Yeah.
Came in and went out. It came in. I mean, so beautiful, very inspiring. I'm happy to know that. I want to finish with one question because this whole season is about delight, right? Which I consider a chakra 2 thing. So we're going back up the mountain. And you call yourself, it's pleasure activism. Tell me.
Yeah.
What's pleasure activism? Because this sounds perfect.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly. Seeking pleasure and joy as a birthright, as well as just knowing that it is a form of activism as well as disruption. And I could go on I could be on so many soapboxes for so much time about like anti-capitalism work and, all of these things like dismantling patriarchy and just but I do think, especially as a Black woman, as a Black femme, I think that any form of seeking pleasure, prioritizing pleasure, and being in joy is a work of activism in general. It's not what patriarchy or capitalism lays out for the sense of desire of productivity, as well as just production in general and generating money. And so a part of unsubscribing from a lot of that is centering my joy, my pleasure, and my rest all the time, with obviously influences like Trisha Hershey from the Nat Ministry. I like just being able to fill my brain over the years with everything from like bell hooks to just all of these different spaces of inspiration, tantric teachers that I've had, like Amina Peterson, all of which I can give you links and things like that for the show notes too, is understanding the sense of euphoria, the magic, and even the energetic alignment that I feel when I'm in pleasure and joy. Even those times that I really get to dismiss from absolutely everything and like go live under the tree, like in the forest, like that is a sense of magic that I try to specifically and intentionally weave into all aspects of my life, knowing that it's going to give me more peace. It's going to give me more community, more groundedness, and more success. Devoid from like money, devoid from production, and devoid from what other people desire from me. So it's focusing in on my own desire and also being able to be the living example and help others do the same. And knowing that that's worthwhile, and it leads to a place of actual success that matters in this world.
And it's I think it's important. I think it's important that those of us who recognize pleasure as an important piece, it's about balance. I mean, the whole chakra system is about balance. And if we have been indoctrinated to believe that it's about work and success and achievement and gaining material things, then it is kind of a radical act to go, oh yeah, also rest. also play,
Mm-hmm.
and to really live into that. And I believe that you doing that with your energy does disperse itself into the consciousness,
For
that
sure.
it gets out into the rest of us and makes us go, wait, what? Play, pleasure, fun?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's how to help come back to balance in
Yes.
ourselves and the whole planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being able to listen. Yeah, being able to listen to, there's so much to learn from that. I think there's this idea that it's just not worthwhile because there's nothing to learn, but there's so much to learn from quiet space. And I get my best ideas when I let myself kind of like do nothing for a couple of days. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much that then floods in because it had the opportunity because I was quiet for a moment. So there's so much value in being able to rest. And I also think it's a lot of reclamation work too. It's a lot of bodily reclamation and being able to rest.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Scout. What would you like people to know? Where can we find you? What would you like to put out there for us to know
I
about you?
mean, yeah, you can find me at scoutwildawake.com for now, and Scout Wild Awake on Instagram, I usually am under the hashtag birth as ceremony. And I've mostly just been active on Instagram. I also do a Substack called Ritual Remedy. And that's just a lot of like my videos and thoughts and things on birth and spirituality and tarot and just insights, astrological insights. So that's where you can find me.
Well, that sounds awesome. I look forward to getting into that Substack and perhaps having a conversation in the future about some of the rituals
Yeah.
and ceremonies, that aspect of
Yeah.
it. So,
I would love
well,
that.
thank you so much, Scout. I look forward to running into you out in the world. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Bye.